Ruler of Beasts, Chapter 9. Lion! Ozma's voice was loud and clear in the huge room. The lion jumped and lifted his paw away from the marble stairs. Immediately the voice in his mind lessened its grip and he shook his head furiously, trying to dislodge it. Ozma was at his side in seconds, one hand on his shoulder, and her light bobbing behind. "We are still under the deadly desert," she said quietly. "But this was once part of the Gnome Kingdom in the land of Ev. The gnome's magic lingers here even now, all these centuries later." With Ozma at his side, he pulled off the staircase was gone entirely. The lion padded back to the murals, studying them carefully. "These are gnomes?" Ozma nodded, looking over his shoulder. "Some people say they were actually fairies themselves, who went down under the earth long ago and became a distant branch of our people. There are fairies living underground in Oz, who look very much like them." "They don't look very nice," he said simply. "The gnomes are not kind people." Ozma stared at the cruel-eyed man in the painting of the banquet hall and shivered. "This place is tainted. Its power nearly trapped you. Come back to the tunnel and be careful not to leave my sight again." After that, the lion made sure to stay in the circle of Ozma's light. They passed more and more tunnels, but Ozma seemed sure of where they were going and only rarely stopped to find the way. Soon the lion could hear a faint, distant noise echoing through the tunnel. "What is that?" he asked. "The king," Ozma said quietly, "digging." As they drew closer, the noise grew louder, a repetitive clinking like metal striking stone. Ozma stopped. "We're close," she said. "If you want to rest, now is a good time. We may not be able to later." The lion had been so overwhelmed by the strangeness of their descent that he'd forgotten his hunger for the first time in his life, but at Ozma's words his stomach rumbled loudly. Ozma smiled, some of the strain leaving her pale, drawn face as she laughed at the lion's discomfort. "Even down here, some things never change," she said teasingly. They found a dry patch on the tunnel floor and settled down. The lion tore eagerly into his bundle and found a hunk of dried meat, some fruit, and a jug of water. Ozma nibbled starfruit and sipped some water while he happily gnawed the meat. They sat in silence for a while, letting some of the weariness fade from their limbs. "What happens when we meet the Gnome King?" Ozma stretched, and the air around her shimmered for a second, as if her magic was stirring with her. "We'll talk to him, and explain to him how important it is Oz remains free." The lion thought this seemed like a naive view of the situation. "I could fight him," he offered, puffing up his chest. "I certainly will if he tries to attack you." Presumably that was why Ozma had brought him all along. If things went south, he could protect her. But as brave as he was, he secretly had his doubts about taking on who knew how many evil fairy-like creatures. His only real fighting experience was with the Battle of Ginger, and her soldiers had been mortal girls. As if Ozma could read his mind, she smiled at him. "You don't need to worry, Lion," she said confidently. "I know you think I'm being silly, but I can be very persuasive when I have to." Her words had that steely hint behind them, and he remembered how she had sounded when she talked about Glinda. If anyone could talk an ancient, evil, homicidal king out of invading their country, Ozma was probably the one. Ozma's magic light bobbed anxiously. "It's time to go," she said, reaching forward to scratch the lion behind his ears. "I'm so glad you're with me. You don't know what a difference it makes to have you here. It's so lonely down here in the dark." Her voice sounded wistful now, and she resembled the sad, brave creature he'd left sitting alone in her chambers on his first night in the Emerald City. Ozma might be powerful, but she still was barely more than a child. The lion stood up and lashed his tail fiercely. "I won't let anything happen to you, Your Majesty," he said. "Not here and not anywhere else. I'll be glad to protect you until the day I die." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that, but thank you." Ozma continued down the tunnel. The lion followed. In just a few moments, the clanking noise they heard earlier was so loud it was almost deafening. It echoed down the long, dark tunnel so powerfully that the lion was tempted to cover his ears with his paws. Ozma stopped in front of the blank wall. Even the ball of light was nervous. It wobbled in tiny circles overhead. "He's here," she said. "Thank goodness. I wasn't exactly sure he would be." "You came down all this way, and you didn't even know if the Gnome King would be here?" the lion asked in disbelief. It seemed likely he would be, Ozma said serenely, but you never know. She rested her palms on the rough stone wall, and the air around her began to glow. Her huge, beautiful gold-veined wings unfurled from her back like a butterfly and spread outward in the still hot air, glowing with a brilliant emerald light. We won't have long to get through, she gasped, her voice thick with exertion. When I say the word, you have to follow me right away. As the incredulous lion watched, the stone began to glow red-hot pound around Ozma's palms. The red glow spread outward like molten lava, running its channel to form the outline of a door covered in mysterious runes. A golden doorknob, glowing with the same emerald light as Ozma's wings, protruded from the door. Now! Ozma yelled, yanking at the doorknob. The entire door-shaped section of the wall swung inward, and Ozma leapt into the darkness on the other side with the lion and the ball of light at her heels. The lion was half convinced he'd slam into solid stone, but instead he felt as though he were falling from a great distance. And then with a bone-jarring thump, he landed in the floor of another tunnel. Well, 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 hissed a sinister, sibilant voice. What under the earth do we have here?